This is my round two for my mall feedback. Ideally, I'm going to be avoiding anything crypto has already stated, and taking into account. I didn't see your message the first time, so that actually helps things out. Where I noticed you talked about how you're on autopilot for this set, and that will come up for a while. Just kind of like the rigidity in your game plan, just kind of your lack of adapting to anything your opponent did, or just varying up how you approached the match. But we'll talk about that as it goes. And doesn't look like, yeah, the feedback, most of the feedback is for other stuff, so should be fine in avoiding, in not covering any ground that hasn't already been covered. Oh, whoops. All right. A few things to consider is you're fighting Lei, right? Lei, Ling, Eddie. All of those characters require you to play a specific way. Uh, they're generally considered lab characters. The top tiers in Tekken, right, force you to play their game, and you're not able to really flesh out your character's game plan or really play to your character's strengths most of the time. And while I wouldn't so go far as to say like Eddie is certainly a top tier or something like that, Eddie Ling and Lei all sort of fall under that same umbrella of you have to, if you don't know this matchup, you have to play in a specific manner until you have better knowledge of at least the matchup or your opponent. The point being is, if you're playing against these characters, you make them approach you. You do not approach them if you can help it. You don't mess with any of that. Additionally, you have to utilize a specific set of moves that hit grounded, right? For Josie, it'll be like full crouch down forward 4, which is kind of slow, and especially slow when you have to, go into full crouch. But there are situations where you can set that up, right? You have to use down 4, you have to use down 3+4, right? The idea is that you have to use a specific set of tools in order to keep chipping away at the Lei and force them into awkward positions where your other normal quote unquote tools will work out a bit more. And well, let's just see how it goes. Right. So right off the bat, right, Crypto mentioned about it, but just like using a lot of forward 4-3 throughout the set, stick to just forward 4, right? Overcommitting on a string is going to it's just leading to bad habits. Like you mentioned, the autopilot thing, and that's something that you do have to correct. Again, remember, there is a difference between autopiloting something versus I know I can abuse this because my opponent isn't going to be able to do anything. Or in certain situations, if I do forward 4-3, it'll work out a bit better. What those situations are, I honestly wouldn't know off the top of my head, but it could be. The idea is that you are acting with purpose as opposed to, just rattling off moves, right? Okay, let's analyze that full sequence right here, right? It's hard to tell when Lei's really gonna stop the Razor Rush, right? Fine. Now, excuse me, he hits you and then transitions into a stance, right? I'm not gonna say Lei is massively plus, like you have to drop everything and respect the ground he walks on, but typically like these mix-up characters that go into stances, if they hit you and then get to go into their stance, like if their stance transition hits you, you have to respect it, right? Think of it like Josie, right? Like, yeah, Josie is always plus 11, quote unquote, when you block a switch transition and then go into switch. But on hit, you have a lot more, the opponent has to respect you a lot more. Think of it like if you do 2-4 on block versus using 2-4 as a punish, you just get massive frame advantage, and the opponent has to take your mix up. They cannot challenge you even with like jabs, like how switch 2 and 3 typically lose to jabs and whatnot, right? It's not always the case, but this is just a general rule of thumb. If your opponent hit you, and especially if they cancel whatever they hit into something, it's more than likely they're plus and they have enough advantage that they're going to counter hit you out of anything you try and do, right? So factor that into account when you look at what happens here. You try to backdash or move or do something. Why, right? Uh, maybe you try to move or something. You blocked low, but he hit you with a mid. Maybe that was the case, but it's like hold back until you get a better feel for how when this Lei likes to go for his rave sweeps, right? And then the hop kick after. Why? What were you gonna beat? Uh, I just don't think Josie's hop kick is that notoriously great. But the thing is, it's just kind of like you do the hop kick right after. You do the hop kick right after you block something, which is fine. But it's like you clearly you know it just shows like a lack of understanding of the stance itself. And I'm not saying that you have to like know his panther stance inside and out, or is it tiger stance? I forget what it's called, right? The open palm stance where he has his palms out like like their claws. It's just about pressing buttons against Lei when you're in a pressure situation is always gonna it's like 99% of the time it's not going to work out in your favor. And the 1% of the time that it works out because the Lei was just being dumb and staying in the stance too long, or he pressed like a slow button, it just doesn't work out, right? It's not like, okay, sorry. The 1% of the time that it works out is not worth the 99% other times where it blows up in your face. Okay, so no, this was good. Okay, maybe you're trying to crush stuff. Okay, so let's analyze that, right? You block switch 2, which puts you at like -7 or whatever, and then you just evade his jab with a hop kick. If throughout the set that the Lei you just see the Lei try to jab check you a bunch of times, you then yeah, sure, go for the hop kick, whatever. But if this is the first time in the set you're just going YOLO, let me just do this move that I know is like somewhat evasive and just fuck it, Hail Mary, right? My issue is not necessarily you doing a hop kick. I'm not saying you can never use a hop kick against Lei. And Josie's is notoriously evasive, right? And I just saw you demolish a jab at -7 somehow, right? But it's more about like, again, you need to make sure, there's a difference between doing something like having a read and then just sort of autopiloting like you were before. And if you start to recognize that you're autopiloting, you need to do whatever you can to sort of, you know, break yourself out of it. Maybe that means throwing the round or the match. Who cares? It's an online game. It doesn't matter. Even if your promotion's online, it doesn't. If you're just gonna be throwing away the match due to autopiloting, what's the difference between at least trying to get something out of it by recognizing, hey, I'm autopiloting and I should probably stop that, right? Now, some people, it varies on how they break themselves out of that, and you might have a different way of breaking yourself out of that autopilot habit. For me, I just take a break if I notice that like I'm just going downhill. I'm just fucking combusting, and I'm unable to sort of play the way that I want to, right? Like there's it's a varying degrees, right? Like I'm never gonna always play perfect, even though I try and aim to, right? But if I notice that like no matter what I do, I'm just hitting a slump and I can't break myself out of it, my methodology is just to fuck it, take a break. I need to unplug and chill out for a bit and then come back with like a refreshed perspective. But there are people who recognize that they're hitting a rut or they're autopiloting or something like that, and they just are able to pull themselves out of it. And you need to experiment with what your preferred method is and how you can best utilize that in a match, because you're not always going to have the luxury of, I can throw away this match to gain it back, right? Which is why I stress doing it now so that you develop that skill. But let's keep going. Right, the main point being is that you did a hop kick and it worked out in your favor, but it doesn't seem to me like that hop kick was like, ah, yes, I have a read that he's gonna jab check me. It's just more of like a fuck it, YOLO, I'm just gonna do this move and hope it works out type of deal. And throughout the match, you'll see a series of like Hail Marys of, oh, I'm just gonna do this move because why not, right? I think Crypto noticed that you just do a lot of up 4-3-4, and it's like you're just doing a bunch of punishable shit on purpose, or you're purposely doing a bunch of punishable shit, but there's no real purpose behind them. You're just doing it because your muscle memory is kicking in and betraying you, and it's just gonna hurt you the further on it goes, right? There is, but don't want to get into like a rant, but there's no ideal perfect way to play Tekken, right? Even it's like, actually, there are, even if you can talk about like, hey, there's this ideal way to play Tekken in this game, just do it. It's like your opponent's not gonna get the same manual you did, right? No, they didn't sign up and just go, ah, yes, I'm gonna play like this honorable Tekken thing or whatever. You're gonna get people who just throw everything at you, and you just kind of have to deal with it, right? The point being is that those it's not really about like being on this moral high ground. It's just about saving yourself headaches down the line of, you know, when you start facing, you know, stronger and stronger opponents and you just can't keep autopilot. You just can't help but keep autopiloting, right? Or if you run into another lane, you just keep autopiloting and the lane seems to catch on. Or he just keeps doing moves that are weirdly evasive, right? Just as much as Josie's got evasive moves, so does Lei. Lei's probably got her beat on that, especially Playdead. Like once he goes into Playdead, it's a whole different ball game. But let's keep going. Okay. Okay. So from here, right? That move, the little like, I forget what it's called, the palm into you know, leg roundhouse or whatever. It is always mid high. There is no mid follow up after that move. He can cancel it into other stances, like you saw, but the idea is again, you always want to duck the follow up or duck. Let's see. Let's say he did it a second time and you duck. Fucking YouTube player. Right, that time you'd have ducked. Let's say you duck the second time. You clearly see him going for the stance, and you can, you know, just stand block, right? You have plenty of time. You don't have to worry about an immediate mid follow up, because it's like there's fully learning a matchup, and then there's sort of like recognizing, you know, what are the common strategies that you'll see a lot of lays implement online, and that mid-high string is always one of them. They love their, you know, their mid-high launchers, especially the one that comes in from Tiger, the one that where like Lay swings his arm around all in front of him and it's like a mid-high, and you can, or like the Tiger 2-2, right? Again, a lot of mid-highs, and you need to start recognizing them so that you can start, you know, not letting the Lay get away with abusing those moves. That's just gonna be the running theme throughout the match, right? It's just gonna be like, look, I'm not saying that you need to memorize this matchup by heart. I'm saying is, here are some common strategies. Try and identify them and try to shut them down. Force the Lay to use other strategies, or because the Lay players have their own crutches, right? We all have our own crutches. We all have these moves that we like and use because we got a lot of like easy rewards out of them, right? If that's the case, identify those moves so that way you can sort of you get easy punishes off it, and you're able to throw the opponent off their game. And so it begins, right? So here throughout the match, you'll see like a lot of okay, ooh, great catch with the rage drive. A tragic fucking tragedy about the drop. But here's the thing: the lay is clearly on the ground. All the lays love going into their play dead. Why three? Well, you're clearly doing 3-3, but just why any of those strings, right? And you see like Lay's evasion kick in. Anything with the poor hitbox, right, is just gonna get demolished. Always in, always stick to these. Always stick to these are for sure gonna hit the Lay and hit him grounded. Down four, down 3+4. If you have time and the distance to set it up, full crouch down forward 4, etc. I think I talked about this in your Noctis matchup. Okay, so you just did forward forward 3, right? You have this sort of neutral situation. You have some frame advantage. The Lay is he's not able to really move around too much at -6. That the opponent can't really move around too much. And you do your go-to follow-up, your go-to counter hit follow-up is always forward 3-4. But throughout the set, the Lay never really plays into it, right? He doesn't press any buttons when he's blocked something big like that. He doesn't try to move around too much. He doesn't try to rush in, etc. In those situations, try to recognize that and just do 1+4, right? Do your moves that make the opponent want to duck, so that your mids have a better chance of success, right? It's all about switching between the options and mixing the opponent up. Maybe at this distance you get a guaranteed, switch one. I haven't messed around with the move too much, but the idea is that you either get a decent shot at a switch mix-up, or and more importantly, you force the opponent to just go, all right, fuck, now she has an annoying load that I have to deal with. Let me deal with that so that I can, try and do something. And then you're able to start rolling out your mids, and that's when they'll start falling for them. Why, right? 3-4, I'm like 90% sure it's punishable. Let me double check. Yeah, -13, right? It. Yeah, I mean, it's like the Lay's not really doing anything that's pressing through any of these strings. And I know Crypto talked about like, hey, use like 3-2 at least and stuff like that. And just in general, you keep trying to finish the string, but you don't do any of the more interesting options to try and help mix up your timings, right? It's always finishing the string. There's never a gap for the opponent to try and fool themselves into thinking like, oh, maybe I can do something here, right? Always finishing the string, but not utilizing your other options to like mix up your timings and stuff. It just leaves the opponent comfortably blocking. And he's not punishing you, which is bad on him, but it's like you're just shooting yourself in the foot and building up bad habits to get punished by it later on. Nice. I didn't even know that was that launch punishable. Tragedy. Again, you get a good whiff punish. Awesome. If the Lay is immediate start, you can see that the Lay is starting to go into play dead, right? Here's the difference. Play dead when the Lay is face down versus play dead when the Lay's back, when he's face up on the ground, right? Two whole different worlds. I've seen plenty of moves that hit Lay when he's face up play dead, just completely whiff for whatever reason when he's face down play dead, right? Even down forward 4, which is like really strong against, AOP or relax, right? You just see it whiff right here. So this is again like a specific matchup thing where it's like, yes, you have these tools that work well against Eddie and Ling, but you need to go the extra step against Lay, and that's just how it is. Right, like if you use down 4, yeah, the damage is kind of whatever, but you would have at least, disrupted him from just from getting a free setup, right? Yeah, I don't think you had enough time for down 3+4, but maybe you did, maybe you didn't. Okay, this is the fun part, right? He hits the thing. You backdash, right? You have a huge life lead. The Lei does not, and he doesn't have rage, right? So he doesn't have his 5 rage drives to mix you up. And more importantly, Lei's not a very high damage character. He has a lot of mix-ups, but not his his B&Bs are like 60 at best, right? It doesn't have a lot of crazy counter hit launches into like 80 plus damage. This gap against most characters, like let's say if you're fighting Paul or Fakamram or whatever, or Leroy, yeah, this could disappear within a combo and a half or something. Lei definitely needs like 2 combos to even get you close to your low health, right? So with that knowledge, knowing that like you have solid whiff punishment tools, solid sort of spacing here, you can control the space and force the Lei to approach you. Because think about it, if you were to approach the Lei, he has like 9 million moves that either evade or set up an evasive stance or set up some or just hit you out of whatever you're trying to do. So let's see what happens. You dance around for a bit. You see, oh, actually, never mind. Oh. It's just a roller coaster of emotion, right? Look, this was good, even though I'm not the biggest fan of down forward 3, right? But right here, why would you do forward 3, right? Forgetting even that the distance and spacing were just off. It's kind of like if you're doing forward 3 in the open without having conditioned your opponent to not run around too much with forward 4, right? You haven't done forward 4 that much. The opponent can just kind of sidestep if they want. You're just putting yourself up at too much risk. And especially this leg extending out in front of you like that is super dangerous. The Lei has a safe down forward too, a solid whiff punisher, right? It's no Paul, but it's like a Law or Huarang. It will launch you on normal hit. And this whiff recovery is insane, right? So Josie's just sticking her leg out, way out in front, and all the Lei has to do is press down forward to and launch you. That's not what happens, but the idea is that kind of like you need to improve on your spacing here, and you also need to just not approach with moves. Don't approach with moves. Even if you think like, oh, he'll run into this, or maybe he'll block it and I'll be safe. It's just kind of like, there's no reason for you to go in, right? What is so scary about a Lei that has to approach you that you're like, oh no, I gotta kill him before he kills me, right? And at the distances you're at, maybe I went back too far, whatever. At the distances you're at, are you really gonna get this guy to the wall, right? With forward 4-3? No. With dash blocking, maybe, right? So opt for more dash blocking here. Don't approach with moves. Remember, utilize in these situations. Use movement, not just moves. Wait, maybe I overestimated the distance. No, yeah. If he was sharp, he could have easily launched you a down forward too, I feel like. But it's like, let's just keep going. And and now look, right? Even though if he didn't launch you, right? He hit you a few times, and then a good portion of your health is just chunked away because combining his whiff punish with your use of panic moves, and he just hits you out of it. And now all you're getting inching closer and closer to a situation you don't want to be in, where even again, like I said, Lei is a low damage character, so you don't necessarily have to worry about combos, but you're also running out of time to like be able to take a mix up, right? It's getting closer and closer to where the one wrong guess is going to be fatal. And this is why you want to stress, just block. Just block. You need some time to figure out like the Lei's timings and when he goes for it, so then you can properly punish him. And tragedy. I forget, were you able to get it? Oh. Okay. Let me see if I can get the right frame. Okay. It's a bit hard to see, but I can already see the power armor sparks, right? Why are you using the power crush? Why? It's so slow. It's so slow. And Josie's on the ground for a pretty long time. Let me see how long. How long does it take for Josie to get jumping? Power crush starts in 8 frames. It takes wait, she takes 22 frames to jump? I don't think that's right. But I could be wrong. I don't know. Okay, so here's the problem, right? Regardless of when the power crush frames kick in, this is a 22, 23 frame startup move, right? And that's a launch? There's no way that's a launch. I gotta check that later. And here's the problem with power crush, right? It is vulnerable to lows and throws. Guess who's got a set of at least one dangerous throw, but I think he has to be in a stance for it, but a huge set of low launchers ready to rip at any point. Right? It's this guy. Good old super cop, right? And this you use this move throughout the match and it just baffles me, right? You're putting yourself at so much risk. Lay's power lows are all just ready to eviscerate your power crush, right? His rave sweep or whatever. He's just gonna launch you. I I'm it's hard, it's always hard to tell when to be like, okay, never use this move. I'm of the opinion never use the power crush against Lay, right? The power crush comes out in frame 8, but it takes like, what is it, 14 frames? It takes like a near quarter of a second. That's a long time, right? You're looking at 14 frames, 22 frames to get to your move, 14 frames of power crush, but they don't matter. At any point, the Lay just punches in any of his rave sweep from whatever stance he's in, and now you're in trouble. You just basically give the Lay a free launch on a silver platter. But I'm rambling. Let's just keep going. A tragedy. That was a good whiff punish. I think I talked about this previously. You're on a Wi-Fi 4 bar, right? And it's like, I think it worked out later. Like basically, I'm talking about using forward 3 as a filler. I'm not the biggest fan because it just drops so easily, whether it's based on distance or lag. I think it works out for you later, but just remember, if you feel the lag when you're playing, just adjust and use your super hard to drop, easy peasy lemon squeezy, B&B routes. Just omit the forward 3 at the risk of dropping, but that's just kind of like an online thing. It's annoying, but it is what it is. Again, you get a really good hit in with Crash Dash 3, you're +4, but you're doing 3-3. Even if it's just like the string, it's just kind of like the Lay's never really pressed at the point, at any point after these sort of situations where he's at a disadvantage, right? Like, he's not going to press anything. So that's when you have to start incorporating the lows and throws, right? Start setting up, 1+4, start doing throws. I'm not the biggest fan of Josie's throw game, but she has a command throw. But the idea being is that you need to start mixing up your options and not just being like, as you said, autopiloting. There we go. There's the Lay I know and love, kind of. Again, right? Look at this. Look at this. Well, he never punishes you, which is silly. But what is so scary? Look at this distance you're at, right? What is so scary about this Lay approaching you? What does the Lay have that's scary on approach? The dive kick that's like super linear and easy to step? forward forward three, which is arguably not that linear, understandably, but again, safe and easy to just kind of like disrupt, right? If he does the back cancel, you're fine, right? He's not gonna be able to like run up and rave sweep you, right? It's like, you know, let's just see what happens. You get baited by the stances. You try to dash in. Yeah, and you're doing a run, right? Just remember, little bit of a dash and then just block. And especially if you see the lay in a stance, you stay the fuck away. You just stay the fuck away, because you need to focus on whiff punishing and trying to bait whiffs out of the opponent. Rip. Good pickup. Sorry, just got off work. So slightly tired, but it is what it is. Okay. And that's another thing. That's just kind of like a general. This is just general Tekken thing, in my opinion, right? The moment you block a stagger low like that, you should be neutral hop kicking, because the stagger low, that's across all characters with that sort of stagger on block animation, right? And I think they buffed neutral hop kicks to sort of hit lower a bit easier, right? That's like a system change. That's not just like, oh, only one character got that. I'll double check that, but I'm like 90% sure. Stagger block is it's a, you know, delayed hop kick. That's a fundamental. If your character has it, and a lot of characters do, you've now built up this muscle memory, this really solid punish that's like, you know, 80 plus damage, because delayed hop kick's like 25 damage starter or some shit, across any character. The moment you feel that stagger animation, your body just reacting to the input of the opponent staggering like that, and then you get to do, you know, you get to do whatever launch you want, right? It's just more, it's, you know, it's more about getting used to that, because that's a skill that's going to transfer over to other players, right? Like if you block Eddie's like a weird capoeira sweep or whatever that he does, slippery kicks, right? Even that one has like a weird ass animation. I think delayed hop kick still works. I'll double check that, right? But if you block like Demo Man, if you block hell sweeps or anything like that, you the moment you see them stagger like that, your body should be reacting with a delayed hop kick. Now, granted, obviously, you know, it's a lot easier said than done. You gotta practice these things, and they can always mix up their timings. But it's I think it's something that's worth practicing. Okay. You know, right as I'm talking about, like, man, I love 1+4. Um, just whiffing it. Okay, even let's see, pushes you away. I still think, you know, use 1+4, but like also be mindful of your distance, right? Maybe you're trying to like, maybe you're trying to use it as like a keep out thing because you expect the lay's gonna rush in, which, it's fine, but I also think you have like better options or something, right? Now, you do this throughout the match, right? This is not, there's gonna be more times later on in the match, but you whiff a switch entry, and because it's a switch entry move, it locks you into switch. And then instead of just letting the stance end naturally, you go to try and like continue the stance. I'm like 80% sure just letting the stance end naturally would leave you in a better spot than continuing with the move, because you're extending you're extending the whiff recovery, because none of the switch moves recover that fast, even switch one, right? And two, look at how much closer you are to the lay now. You're pushing yourself forward by doing these moves, where if you just let the stance run out, even if the lay, at the distance the lay was at, he's not going to be able to reach you in time. You can just start naturally blocking. The ideal is that you don't just randomly whiff switch entry moves, so you don't put yourself in that situation. But as a backup, it's like if you have the distance for it, don't commit to a move. Just let the stance end and go back to like moving around and positioning yourself and trying again next time. Trying to keep pressing a move, hoping that he'll run into it, is just gonna get you whiff punished and whiff punished to death, right? Like that rave sweep. I forget if you even. Oh, nice, nice. I thought we got that round. Rip. Oof. Okay, so I'm just gonna do my summary now. I don't want this video to drag on too long. I really need to work on my timing. Neutral. When crypto brought this up, right? You need to start utilizing movement. You need to start, Korean backdashing steps, backdash count, KBD, and then just kind of like, side steps and like that. Because it's more, Josie's not going to create a bunch of pressure situations to use against this Lei. Josie's hitboxes on her moves are fairly weak, and then on top of that, you have to deal with Lei's evasion. You're not really going to be piling on the pressure on this guy, right? It's like you need to focus more on movement to create whiffs, but also patience, right? You're not gonna be doing KBD right off the bat and have it down pat and start like creating these crazy whiff opportunities and stuff like that. But it's like ideally you should be practicing KBD because movement. It's Speed Kicks brought up the analogy of like they're talking about Korean backdash canceling. That's a whole different discussion. They brought up like it's like dribbling a ball, right? The basic dribbling a ball movement to to move the basketball throughout the court is like a fundamental of basketball, right? And then look at how someone who just started doesn't. Look at how the pros are able to handle the ball, and it's like you want to train that fundamental always. But another option you have is just patience, right? A simple patience and just waiting it out and letting the opponent get frustrated, because one, it's online, everybody's stupidly aggressive, right? And they're gonna start throwing out moves. And if you meet someone else who's very patient or passive, then that's awesome, because then you can start doing your stuff. But that's a whole different discussion. The main goal here is simply waiting it out and letting this Lei approach you and start flipping through all of his stances and trying to bait a whiff out of him is going to lead to far more success than it would, trying to run in like you are now. Right, like that, right? If you had simply waited and let him, I think this is backswing blow. I'm pretty sure that might be launch punishable. I'd have to check. Right, if you simply waiting it out and seeing like, okay, where is this gonna go first? How crazy does this opponent get, and how much can I take advantage of that? So practice movement. Movement's always a good ideal to practice towards, but also just start practicing patience. Building up that patience is its own skill, right? Build up that patience. Just kind of like, I'm not gonna press anything. I don't have to, right? You as the player don't have to, especially in situations where you had the life lead. You let the Lei come to you and start trying to like bait you out with moves and bait you out with all these annoying stance transitions, and you just wait it out. If the clock runs out, so be it. You get the round because you had the life lead, right? What is the Lei gonna do? You throughout the match, you just get sucked into this Lei's rhythm, and you can't be doing that to yourself, right? You need to force the Lei out of his comfort zone, right? All of these Ling, Lei, Eddie, all of that, the moment an opponent starts rushing them down blindly, not knowing the matchup, boom, it's like candy to them, right? They're just able to start it's like Christmas or whatever. They're just able to get all these free rewards and benefits that they normally wouldn't if the opponent just waits. Let them approach and force them out of their comfort zone and put themselves at risk to try and open you up. And yeah, there's gonna be times where you get caught by something because you're not familiar with the matchup, and that's fine. Now you know what that thing is or whatever happens, and you'll be better prepared next time. So neutral, it's just you gotta start developing patience. I know part of it's like the autopiloting, which is fine, but just keep that in mind for future. As far as like tools go, it's really hard to say like, yeah, start utilizing this move, because you really need to be mindful of like Lei's auto parries and his various stances and stuff like that. uh, yeah, so punishment and matchup knowledge, let's just talk about that. You don't need to be a rocket scientist about the Lei matchup, right? You don't need a PhD in Lei Wulong to understand like, okay, yeah, here's how to handle this matchup. Patience, focus on patience, keep out with punishment, and also just look out for common strats, right? Lei's all the Leis have this move or transition of like, all right, they're gonna go for this move, or they're doing the mid-high string that I know of, so you can just duck it because you don't have to worry about a mid follow-up after, right? So that way you can just kind of like, okay, I know if I restrict all of these commonly used options, it'll force the Lei further out of his comfort zone. Like he can't just steamroll you with these cheesy basics that work on everybody that doesn't know this matchup. It's all about there are multiple ways to put pressure on your opponent. You can use moves to apply pressure, but also just forcing them out of their comfort zone, right? Forcing them to utilize strategies they're not comfortable with, or putting them in awkward situations, is a form of pressure that can help you gain momentum as well. So take that into consideration. Just look out for the common things, shut those down, and and that can also be a way of like learning the matchup of like, okay, I shut down all these common options. What else does this player like to do? And watch out for his preferences, stuff like that. Combos and Oki. Yeah, I think combos were like, it's hard to tell if the combos were whack or if it was just like the connection. It was kind of whatever. Oki, I think you could do a bit better with dealing with Oki, but it's fine. Yeah, it's fine. Was there anything else I wanted to add? Personal opinion stuff, right? Stuff that like, hey, I think these options are neat, but your mileage may vary. I could think you could definitely abuse Crouch Dash 3 a lot more. The Lei's not really ducking you. He blocked every forward 3-4 you did after pressure, stuff like that. So you can use Crouch Dash 3 to like open up your opponent more. And sometimes with Crouch Dash 3, right? Like let's say you get the hit in, and you didn't get the counter hit, so you don't go for the follow up. It's fine to just sacrifice the +4 for movement and just give yourself some more breathing room, right? Keep yourself at a good distance where if the Lei whiffs anything, you can just go for Crouch Dash 3 again. But it's like, if it's like an awkward axis or you're not sure about what you want to do next, it's fine to just sacrifice that opportunity of like, oh, I'm +4 against a Lei, and just try it again another time. So keep that in mind. If forward 4-3 gets blocked, I think you could also be going for down 2. Down 2, hold down to set up full crouch stuff, or just down 2 and try to like. I just feel like the again, a lot of this goes back to the autopiloting thing. It's that the series of moves you were doing, you were doing nothing to mix up your timings and stuff like that. And yeah, you were autopiloting, blah blah blah, but focus on that, right? Try to chip away at it and try to keep your timing, help try to utilize all of Josie's tools to help mix up your timings when possible. Other options that I would say, no, I think besides that, I think the big crux of the big issues were the lack of patience and the autopiloting, right? And yeah, they kind of go hand in hand, but there you could also not be autopiloting, but you're also just impatient and trying to rush in when you shouldn't, right? And you got to watch out for that. You know, Lei, Eddie, Ling, whatever. You're, it's a test of patience. It's a grind game. It's a war of attrition, and I use that a lot, right? Because it's like, I think a lot of people ask about like, oh, what do I do against like Steve or Paul and stuff like that. And I always say like, it's a or Leroy. It's a war of attrition. That's just the nature of the game when you're playing the top tiers, right? Right, or just these sort of lab characters, quote unquote. You are you're not going into this match going like, yeah, I'm gonna play, basic super fundamental Tekken or whatever. No, you're gonna play their game, and you have to knowingly adjust to that, right? Because you're not gonna be able to fully play. You're not gonna be able to start doing butterfly edge stuff. You're not gonna be able to use like CD1+2 for pressure, easy pressure, etc., etc. But the idea is that you you don't get sucked into the rhythm, and you start just wait it out, forcing them to make mistakes so that you'll get an opportunity to use your stuff, right? Yeah, besides that, it's just kind of like you got sucked into the Lay's rhythm. It's unfortunate and it happens, but just try to be mindful of that and do what you can to pull yourself out of that, to pull yourself out of that mental state, and just kind of be like, okay, wait, let's pump the brakes. Let's try and approach this situation with a different perspective and use different tools. All right. Uh, yeah, I don't want to go on for too long. If you have any questions, the usual, feel free to ask them in critique, and just kind of like, yeah, it's really just trying to break yourself out of that mental state of like, all right, I'm just gonna start throwing out moves or something like that. Or if you notice that the muscle memory kicks in and betrays you. All right, cool.